Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Cure for the Common Game. Today we're going to be talking about Mairsil. Again, this is actually my third time trying to do this video, but anyway. Mairsil is... he's Grixis. I don't know. Mairsil. But it comes into play, you exile an artifact or creature from your hand or graveyard. Now, graveyard, that's where... See, I kind of passed over this one thus far because I didn't want to lose a card, but then I realized it said or graveyard, so you can actually use something, and then once it's in the yard, put the cage counter on it. So I guess first we will look at the cards that we want to, well, actually first let's do some ramp, because we have some rather expensive things. Let's do some ramp here, or it's actually more color fixing than anything else. Of course, we have ourselves a Soul Ring, the Felwar Stone, Izzet Signet, Rakdos Signet, the two appropriate border posts. I like the border posts, especially when you're running, a lot of basics, as I tend to do. Cameo, Ingot, Obelisk, and Manolith. Now that we got that out of the way, we can get to the creatures and artifacts that we want to put cage counters on. Now, first and foremost, my first pick was Patron of the Moon. Now, it's not much for 7 mana, but when you're not casting it and you're just exiling it from your yard, putting a cage counter on it, and giving 1 mana double landfall to your commander, that's amazing. That's some ramp. And with as much card draw as we have, you're going to be able to use it. Now, Mairsil is a wizard. So Azami here she's good to cast. She's good to exile. If she dies, but let's face it, if we're using Azami to tap to draw cards, Arcanus is probably better. And Arcanus is one you definitely want exiled. I mean, he's cool and all if you cast him and are able to, but the ability to draw 3 cards and then to bounce him, the way Mairsil is worded on Gather, it says any instance the card uses of its own name, you put Mairsil's name there. So you tap to draw 3 cards, and you spend 4 mana to return Mairsil to its hand, and then you recast it, getting another cage counter trigger. I wanted to get as many cage counter triggers as possible, and that's the reason why I did things like Decoction Module returns it to your hand. Crystal Shard, going to return it to your hand. Conjure's Closet, doesn't return it to your hand, but effectively the same thing. You get an extra use per turn out of it. So, and since it happens at the end step, it's not sick all the time. We have, and most importantly, to get the cage trigger, you put the Blade of Selves on there. You swing with it, which is kind of risky, but you're going to swing at somebody that's open anyway. And all those copies come in. They all die because the legend ruled. You don't care. You're getting that many cage counter triggers. And then, of course, we have ways to untap so that we can use our general over and over and over again, because a lot of them do involve tapping. Speaking of ways to untap, both of these abilities are pretty good. You just spend 3 mana to untap, and and it also taps for 3 colors, or 3 generic rather. Back to the creatures. Speaking of untapping, Torchling, you're going to spin that red just to untap it, and I mean, it's got a host of other abilities you may, use, but this card is in there for the untap, because you want to do things like kill multiple flyers a turn if you need to, or worse yet, Demonic Horse is one of those cards that nobody... Whoa. Why are we fuzzy? There we go. Demonic Horror is a card that I don't know that I have cast this card in the past 20 years. Just to be honest with you. But that upkeep, 3 specific black. I mean, in a mono black deck, that's fine, I guess. It is a 5/5 for 6. But the tap to destroy target land, if you don't have to deal with that upkeep and you don't have to cast it, if you just exile it with a cage counter and your general gains this ability and has, 1 red mana untap, things can look pretty scary. Whoever's been picking on you, it's time to to settle up. Another good tap ability is tap to lightning bolt. Always seems good. I love Kamal, but he is a little fragile. But, when you get that ability on your dude, that's fine. If things die, you have the ability to cast them. Hey. Now, Shivan Hellkite is in there because that ability doesn't tap. If you've got enough mana, which we should, got enough mana, it's just a ton of damage. It's creature or player. Yes, it's 2 for 1, but you know what? There are times when that's all you need, just a couple of damage. Aetherling, to go with a Torchling. I like Aetherling simply because it does blink it. Well, not really blink, because blink instantly brings it back. It comes back at the end of turn. So anyway, you get another cage trigger counter. As you can see from the amount of artifacts, it's not going to... I don't know how this slipped by me, the Hellkite Igniter. All this time, I mean, I think I've got it in a couple of decks, but it's never been, foremost in my mind. Yeah, 7 mana, 5/5 flying haste, but that's a colon. You can activate this multiple times a turn. Wow, it's even better when you got to pay the 7. Soul of New Phyrexia. Hey, I mean, this is this living the dream? Probably not. Probably not. Planar Bridge is probably living the dream because you can go search out your pieces. Now, granted, that 8 mana activation, you're getting around the 6 mana payment if you cage it, but you're still paying 8. I mean, it's, that's expensive and all, and I think that's the reason why this card hadn't blown up, but I think time will show you that this is pretty useful. Of course, y'all know I love it. The Master Transmuter is... I love it. I love it. I was at GP Memphis, and Erin Campbell was telling me how she loops the spine of Ishal with this. It's beautiful. Of course, we all, But especially when you don't have to cast it, or you do cast it, it goes out there, it does its thing, they get scared, they kill it, you put a cage counter on it from your graveyard, and you know what? Life is good. Killed all the Forge Masters just to help us. I mean, if we cast it, if we cage it, whatever, this ability is pretty good. This ability is, okay, I know this right here is probably a slot. That's a very expensive draw card, and I thought it was a good idea at the time. I mean, draw 4 cards is not a bad ability. But, I don't know. We have so much card draw. I'm just not thinking that that's a... Give me some ideas, folks. What do I put in for the Tower of Fortunes? Trading Post, I mean, it's got a handful of abilities here. You can make blockers. Hey. And, of course, the best cage counter target is Nevernal's Disc. I mean, we know that just simply because the thing about the disc is you cast a disc, you use the disc, and it's gone. However, with Mairsil, you can disc repeatedly because you cast a disc, you use the disc, and then you exile it from the yard, put a counter on it, cage it. You cage it. I wish I'd have come up with that earlier, so I had said that a million times. But anyway, you cage it, and then you have a disc for the rest of the game. Now, granted, your commander tax is going to get pretty high up there, but I like Foul Familiar. Foul Familiar is really, I almost said it was really good. It is not really good. Let's get this up here to where you can see the whole dang card. Foul Familiar from Ice Age, we thought there was this new tournament format called Draft back then, and didn't know how it was going to work. But Foul Familiar was pretty decent in that particular draft because there was a dark ritual in this set. Anyway, the reason why it's in here is the ability to bounce it. Black mana, bounce it, and you can recast Mairsil to get another ETB trigger. Our last one here, well, not the last one. This card is absolutely terribad, I'm telling you, because you bounce 3 basics, whatever, but we don't have to do that because we're just exiling it. And it does everything we want it to do. This is every single ability you want your general to have. Tap to return your general to the owner's hand. That way you can recast and get another cage trigger. To bury a creature. By the way, bury means destroy without possibility of regeneration. And you hand out a sheep to that person. This is so much win. Anyway, Hellvault, another card that we would love to exile because repeatable exiling of creatures seems pretty good. Steel Hellkite has the double-costed fire breathing, obviously, but it's 2 colorless, and the blow up the CMC line. So that's, and it's a 5/5 flyer. So let's look at how we're going to get these cards into the, hand and yard. Careful Study is exactly where we want to be at on turn 1. I think in this deck, I'd rather have a turn 1 Careful Study than probably a first turn Soul Ring. I guess depending on what's left in your hand, what the rest of it is. But you're drawing and discarding, and of course you want to be discarding the cards that you want cage counters on. Of course, Careful Study's little brother, Faithless Looting, which you can do on turn 1 and you can do again later. It's awesome. I guess the perfect flow would be Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, Faceless Looting. I don't know. Seemed like you'd be getting screwed on mana at that time. Well, no, because you're going to be drawing cards. Yeah. Anyway, Cathartic Reunion, drawing and discarding, because we're trying to fill up the graveyard with stuff we want to exile with cage counters. Desperate Ravings, Frantic Search, drawing and discarding. Sift, not as cool. It's sorcery, it's 4 mana, but it's on theme. Forbidden Alchemy. I like this one. I mean, you get 1 and dump 3. Hey, and you get to use it twice. Now, the Magus of the Wheel, as I understand this, and y'all know that I'm not a rules guy, but since we have to replace his name with Mairsil's, you've got to... Wait a minute. So it says 2 mana tap, sacrifice Mairsil, each player. Yeah, so you got to sack it. I mean, there's no way to not sack it. You can't just pay 2 mana and tap it. But that's okay. It'll go back to the command zone. You get a re-trigger when you play it. We got to be really careful about sacking our general and killing it, a whole bunch of times. That's why I don't have a lot of those effects in here. I have a lot of bounce to hand. Because eventually that commander tax is going to get, especially when you're the one causing it, not your opponents. It's going to get out of hand. Walking Atlas is good in both instances. It's great on turn 2. It's amazing off a Soul Ring on turn 1. I mean, there's not much more power that you can do on turn 1 than Soul Ring and Walking Atlas. I'm sure there is, but, for longevity's sake. Anyway, or you use it a couple times, somebody gets tired, they wrath the board, you cage it. Hey, Horseshoe Crab's another thing. I don't know how these got out of order. Horseshoe Crab's another one that you're going to cage. I mean, I guess we could play it early game if we got some, early game beaters. I mean, It's 3 mana. If it blocks a turn, it's essentially a fog that turn, and then it dies, and you can cage it. So that's what it is. Thirst for Knowledge, we're back to drawing and discarding. And then Steam Augury. I'm using Steam Augury instead of the mono blue one because, well, I have the Steam Augury. And it doesn't really matter where it goes. Hell, you want it. You want the cards to go to your graveyard, so, you know. And then I have good old-fashioned Concentrate. Just mana for cards. By the way, this is the original version of Harmonize. Harmonize was a color-shifted version of this from Planar Chaos. Just a little weird trivia there. Got a spell book, just because, you know, why not? Our 2 board wipes, Crux of Fate. Not that we're expecting dragons, but, you know, if there are no dragons, it's a 5 mana Wrath. And, of course, in Garrick's Wake. I don't really think the 9 mana hurts us that much since we do got so much ramp. And Diabolic Tutor. And, of course, our last card here, or the last non-land card, anyway, is our girl Saheeli. Why not? I mean, the 1 damage to each opponent, that's, I don't know, it's not really a thing in EDH. You don't really see Saheeli rocking a lot of, you know, commander tables, but the ability to create a copy of Mairsil, yes, it's going to die, but when you are desperate for that, to get that one thing in your graveyard, a cage counter, it could happen. I don't really care that much for ultimate abilities on Planeswalkers in Commander unless you can, you know, instantly get it out there with like a doubling season or whatever. But what was a couple days ago, that Friday night, went to a friend's house. There was 10 of us there. We were playing big games, 10-player EDH games, and a player played an Elspeth. Walker used it, made 3 blockers, which, you know, that's a particularly good Elspeth, but he didn't untap with it because you had so many people, the game was so large, you had so many people attacking, and he had to chump block with his 3 soldier tokens, and eventually it got to the point to where, and of course, you know, everybody knows that particular Elspeth's got to go. She cannot, generally Planeswalkers in general cannot be left unchecked. So, the reason why I don't use a whole lot of walkers in EDH is you're paying for 1 activation. That's it. The mana cost, you're going to get 1 activation. If you get any more than 1 activation, that's bonus. It's just, you have so many players, and Planeswalkers are, I mean, we all know they're powerful, so it's not a secret. But anyway, that's what I've got for Mairsil. Hope I did it justice. Kind of anxious to play it. May actually take this next week, but y'all let me know what you think. But right now, we're going to shuffle and cut.